Yeah.
Like, my price point is always too low, and Lucian's is always too high. And then we fight each other into a middle point. Like my number and your number, if we split the difference, that's probably what we choose every time, and we save a lot of time. Hello and welcome to the Open Hardware Manufacturing Podcast, the podcast about making open source hardware. My name is Stephen Hawes.
And I'm Lucian Chapar.
And today we are talking about pricing your product. This question comes from IL Wright, and they ask to hear about how we determine the price of the things we sell. Have we ever felt like we are over or undercharging people for our products? How do you do the price discovery? Is there a particular formula you use to determine it? It is hard to do it.
Yeah, there's no great formula that we've found, but we've done it a bunch of times now, and we've gotten a good feel for what works well for us.
Yes, our notes for this episode is literally we just brain barfed all the random things we think about when we do pricing that ultimately culminates in something that's worked really well for us so far.
Yeah.
We talk about, the top down or bottom up approach. We talk about your MMO, your minimum monthly obligation, and making sure that you're covering that with the price that you pick. Some history of pricing that we had for the Lumen PMP and our first pass at it and how cheap it was and how we were not making a lot of money on those. Bulk pricing, razor blade model, a really weird slice of pizza Lucian had in Berlin, and also, if you can't afford a helicopter, you should just take the bus.
Yeah, this is a good one.
I swear.
You set me up for that.
Did.
Yeah.
Thankfully, you said it and not me. I enjoyed this episode a lot. This is a very hard one to determine. There's so many variables that go in, and there's no real algorithm. A lot of this is vibes.
Yeah.
As an engineer, that's a little annoying, but you got to deal with it. You got to figure it out.
And anytime Steve and I have a pick a price together, we usually start pretty far apart. So it's, the opposition is always a fun thing to find happy medium in.
It is. It's a long but fun decision. All right, let's get into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
So before you even think about what to price your product at, you kind of know what it costs you to make it. Because if you need to make sure you're making money on the thing.
Yeah, you can't be in the dark here.
Exactly. It has to be sustainable. So the first thing is figuring out your BOM cost. This is very different than your COGS. We'll get into both of these. But your BOM is literally your bill of materials. Like, I need to buy all the things that go into the thing I'm selling. What does that actually cost me? So this is stuff like the actual raw materials, the packaging of what you're actually shipping out. Like, you have a box, you have foam.
So you have your BOM, but obviously, it's never just a flat price. You have different price breaks to something. And so it's considered in terms of how much of the material do you envision yourself buying?
Right.
So as an example, for us early on in the Lumen kit, we looked at the cost of everything as it related back to 100 machines.
Yeah. And we were lucky enough to have a safe note to be able to buy 100 machines worth of stock in one fell swoop. So for you, it might be, depending on, your fundraising situation, you might only buy 10. We initially did a 7-unit build because we could only afford 7. Remember that quantity 7 buy we did? It was we couldn't afford 8. We could only afford 7. So we bought 7 of a Lumen in kind of like a test run. And that worked really well. But think about your price breaks here. Because if you grow to the point where you're doing 1,000 piece purchases, 10,000 piece purchases, you want to know that you're going to get a better price. It's going to bring down your BOM cost for your product. So we had a lot of fun with spreadsheets of making here's what the COGS the bill of materials would be, or if we bought an 100 piece build, 500 piece build, 1,000 piece build. It's just good to have those options.
The 100 piece was not an arbitrary number. It was derived from strategy.
Yeah.
And the sweet spot of we're getting 80% the cost savings of buying in bulk without having to have hundreds of thousands of more dollars in the bank account.
Exactly. Yeah. And also, if you're still changing stuff, do you not want to have that much stock on hand? A lot of things to consider. But when you're figuring this out, just have an axes for your scale.
Oh, yeah.
This is maybe the quickest point we'll have in this whole episode, but it's probably the one that takes the longest. Because we had this document when we did our first piece build called Grand Central. It was Lucian's labor of love. It was a beauty. It had every single aspect of the cost of every single thing that went into a Lumen for that 100 piece build. It was gorgeous. It took so much time to put it together, but we knew to the penny how much it cost us to buy all the stuff to go into a Lumen kit. It takes a lot of time. That's okay. It's going to take you a lot of time to put all this together.
It's so much easier to get this stuff right from the onset.
Yeah.
It's worth that time.
It is. Yeah. It feels like it might be a waste because it's not directly pertaining to getting the thing out the door, but you need to know this. It's like not optional to figure this stuff out. So figure it out accurately. Know your BOM, your bill of materials cost.
Yeah, for sure. Because if you go through all the work of picking a price, and we'll talk through that, but if your basis for your COGS was wrong, then it's all fraud.
Yeah, exactly. Like, doesn't matter. Like, you're building on top of a shaky foundation.
Oh, there you go. You got the analogy this time.
There's a lot of podcasts left. You're going to upset me. I know it.
I'll try. But so like we can talk about then what goes into the cost of goods sold, or COGS.
Yes. COGS is kind of an outer shell outside of your BOM cost.
Yeah, there's all the hidden stuff you might not necessarily think about. It's the stuff past what the Amazon shopping cart, if you will, adds up to. So it's like the labor cost, the duties or the import shipping, depending on your country, the cost of fulfilling something.
Mm-hmm.
There's also the fulfillment cost here. Like, and for us, that early on, it meant getting the cost of shipping right.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work to quote shipping correctly for 200 plus countries with 7 different box sizes and a multitude of different weights for your order permutations. So like you might be losing money on a shipping label sometimes.
Yeah,
like,
we
that's
did for
a
while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's worth it. So it's a thing to consider. What's that cost of fulfillment?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You still got to be aware of it. And like similar to with your BOM cost, your COGS, we mention it quickly, but it takes a ton of time. Implied with figuring out your labor cost, there's a ton of variables that go into that. How long does it take to put your thing together? You need to do a time trial.
Yeah.
For every single aspect of assembling it. We use Live Split 1 sometimes. That's what I use when I time myself. It's literally a web tool used for speedrunners, but I use it to time myself for putting stuff together, building things, running certain jobs or whatever. And it's really good for just figuring out how long stuff takes. But you need to measure that. You need to know for every single aspect and then pricing out someone's time to do that. Like you need to figure all that stuff out. That goes into the cost to make the thing, cost of goods sold. What are all the money you have to spend to actually get that thing in a box ready to go out to somebody? So there's a ton of work that goes into this too, figuring that out early on. If you're doing your labor and you're putting everything together yourself, it's effectively free.
Yeah.
But you have to start thinking about that later on when you have hired employees that are helping you with putting stuff together.
Yeah. When Steven and I were the ones packing the DIY kits, it was a lot simpler. But we also had to model out like how does it grow and how does it become sustainable to afford help?
Right. Like we still even priced in the cost of labor of assembly because we knew we didn't always want to be putting the things together. We have to go on and design the next thing. So we had to we still had to bake that in when we were figuring out our pricing because it's going to happen eventually.
Yeah.
And prices are sticky. So we wanted to make sure we had that kind of rolled in from the beginning.
Honestly, there's so many creators I'm friends with or fans of, and I see it all over the place where they don't value their time correctly.
Yeah.
They're undercutting like other people in the industry. They're creating a business model for themselves that's not sustainable. It doesn't like allow for growth. It's really important to value your time and price it in. You'll be paying for it somehow.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. The money's got to come either in your mental health or, slowly hemorrhaging savings or whatever the heck it is. You got to consider that.
Yeah.
You need money to live in this world. You got to give yourself something.
Yeah. So like really take that seriously.
Yep.
And on top of that, add a healthy margin of error.
Yeah.
Like padding is important to dampen the effects of like global price fluctuations as we've seen the last couple of years. Like the cost of shipping a container from China to the US went on a bull run.
Yeah, it was insane.
Yeah. And meanwhile, all these cost spikes have given companies a chance to just hike prices even further.
Right.
There's fluctuations as well outside of your control. Maybe a box came damaged and you have to pay to rush ship something. Maybe someone's out sick and you have to pay overtime to recover.
Yep.
Like you have to consider what's the average cost to make a machine, and the average doesn't mean everything went perfect necessarily.
Yeah. There is no week that is the same week to week in terms of like something going wrong and costing more than it probably should have.
Yeah.
Assume things will go wrong and have a good little buffer in there for your COGS. Like usually when I pick a number, I pick the most conservative number. Like I round up to assume it's going to cost a little more than maybe it does on average to help kind of add that buffer in when I'm figuring out what the COGS is.
Yeah. And like, early on for us, a nice source of padding was the assumption that everything would be air-shipped and that we were paying the highest possible like import duty rate for stuff.
Right.
And that's not necessarily always how it felt or landed, but it gave us room for things to cost more than they needed to.
Yep.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, we assumed they would cost more to airship, and sometimes we'd put it on the ocean, It takes a little longer, but we save money there, and that brings the actual price down a little bit. But we have that buffer. It's good to have that.
Your mileage may vary here.
Yeah. And there's other ways to add buffer down the road too.
Yeah.
Arguably, you may want your cogs to just be accurate, and then your buffer comes somewhere else. But we kind of sprinkle in a little bit of like, just assume maybe it's just a kiss more for your cogs, so you have a little bit of that buffer baked in out of the gate.
And when I say buffer, I be precise, like know what the real number is.
Yes.
But like, do you also know where you're rounding up or down to your advantage?
Yeah. Be intentional with where you're fudging stuff a little bit.
Yeah.
Cool. So now you've done a ton of work. You know how much every item in your thing costs to get in-house. You know how expensive it is to put it all together. You know what it costs an organization to build your thing. Now you have to decide. So the whole output of this is literally one number, and that is the price it is costs you to make the thing.
Yes.
And with that single input, you now have to decide how to price it. There's two broad mentalities about how to do this. But before we get into those, we just have a lot of individual little things to consider because so much of this is gray.
Yeah.
Like this is not a precise art. This is a hard thing to do, is pricing your thing. So these are just kind of like a whole bunch of things that we inevitably discuss and throw around when we're trying to pick a price for something.
For sure. Yeah. Let's tear into it.
Yep.
Just off the bat here, Steven and I are complete opposites on price.
This is one of the most like contrarian discussions we ever have.
We've learned to debate price civil, but we start on opposite sides of the field.
We start so differently. It's really funny. Like, I think on most things, you and I are like pretty close to aligned on a lot of stuff, on the important stuff.
Yeah.
And what's great about how we work together is that we, when we do disagree, we figure it out.
Yeah.
We hash it out. We'll have a conversation. It's always good. But I think this is the thing where we start the furthest apart from each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, I don't want to speak too much for you, but I think you think highly about what it would cost to you or what it would feel like coming out of your wallet. And I'm thinking a lot about like, well, what does it cost the operation? What does it cost to make it? What does it cost to get it here? What's like a really big picture?
Right. And both, the opposite is also true. Like,
Yeah.
I'm also very aware of how much money it brings into the company. And you're also very aware of how it feels to buy that thing.
Yeah.
It's about really the focus. Like, a phrase I use a lot is glow tie Steven, because like the reason the Lumen exists is to help out silly little 2019 Steven trying to make the glow tie. And like, what's going to be too expensive for that person? Like me in that era,
Yeah.
What's going to feel too pricey for that person? I want to make sure that person still has an option that they feel like they can afford. So that's what I'm always too low.
Yeah.
Like my price point is always too low, and Lucian's is always too high. And then we always we fight each other into a middle point. Like if you were to graph it out, my number and your number, if we split the difference, that's probably what we choose every time, and we'd save a lot of time.
Yeah, I think there's been for like small parts, trivial items, and we sell in low volumes. There's been times where I'm like, okay, Steven, what's your cost? What's mine? We just split the difference.
We literally just split the difference because we know that's how we are about things. But yeah, I'm very aware of that. And also, like, there is a correct price.
Yeah.
That is the price where you are the most successful. You're selling a lot of units. Like, you could have a price that's too high and you might make a lot of money per sale, but you're not selling nearly as many. Or you price it really low and a lot of people buy it, but you don't make that much money per unit. There is a sweet spot where you're doing the best. I mean, obviously that's only your money. Like, that's only looking at how much money can we make. And there's other considerations of like, it's good to keep it cheaper so that it's more accessible to people, so you can get it out to more people. A consideration is like, especially if you're starting out early, you might maybe not take a hit, but like not make nearly as much money to start, to just seed a community and get a lot of units out there. Like, we intentionally kept the price as low, like pretty low early on, because we really wanted to just get it in people's hands and like seed that environment. And then, we could raise it later and think more about sustainability down the road. But so like, there is a quote unquote correct price. There is a sweet spot, right?
And you'll never know it.
And you'll never know it. And that's why this is such an eternal argument, is that like, I always think that sweet spot is low and you always think it's high.
Yeah.
And it's probably in between us somewhere. So like, neither of us are wrong. We just have a different starting point of like where we think that sweet spot is. That's kind of how I think about the difference there.
Yeah. The BYOP DIY Lumen kit's a good example here.
Yeah.
Where I think we were debating over what to price the item when it cost us about $450 give or take.
Yeah. Is that COGS?
Yeah.
That's landed, ready, package, ready to ship.
Yep.
Okay.
And it was probably a little inaccurate. We've learned so much more since then.
Yeah.
But do you remember what price you wanted it to be? I think I originally wanted that kit to be like $12.50.
Yeah, I think I was closer in the $7.50 range.
Yeah, so like I had a 66% margin thereabouts, and you were in the low 40 range.
Yeah. And like a general rule of thumb, we'll talk about this a little bit more later, but like you generally want it to be like between 2 to 3x your COGS is what you sell it for.
Yeah.
Broadly speaking, there's so much variation there, but like I wasn't even at 2. I was at like 1.5.
Yeah.
Like you're a little more than that or something. Like I was off.
Yeah.
You were a little bit more healthily placed. And then we picked just under $1,000, and that's still low, but we were trying to seed it out. We were trying to get it out to people. So I think probably that's why we ended up choosing for it to be lower.
We were also highly considerate of like, what would it cost someone to buy it from like Alibaba or the Amazon builder?
Yeah.
There was a lot of consideration there.
Right. Like we got price breaks because we bought stuff in bulk. How do we pass that along to make it spicier to buy it from us? And knowing that it's coming from us and you're going to have warranty and support and all that stuff. We had that in mind as well.
Yeah. Ultimately, we landed nicely in the middle of our two opposing sides there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That first batch was, I think it was 1995 or something like that. Or no, 995. 995.
Yeah,
it was just under $1,000. Yeah.
And that was really important because I think early on we were talking about, I think in all the Hackaday articles, like
the Hackaday article title was the $450 bomb cost Lumen PNP.
Yeah.
Which that was true back then. We've added a lot of sugar on top. It's definitely more expensive to make now.
Oh yeah.
But back then, if you figure it's 450 our COGS, you remove the COGS price, but then you also increase the cost for everything because we got good price breaks for that point. It probably was about $450. Like that was probably pretty dead on.
Yeah, I have the exact numbers if we want to go through them. They're kind of fun.
Okay.
The bomb for the Lumen kit was, I'm rounding up here, $270. Freight cost of getting everything airshipped was about $100. So bomb and freight, $375.
Yeah.
We factored in about $56 in duties per machine. Again, this is all airship, like white glove, DHL for everything because we were just newbies.
Yep. And we were trying to ship fast too.
Yeah. So it ended up being about $430, I see.
It's crazy that like was 270 is actual bomb and like 100 like inbound shipping. Like that's crazy percentage for shipping.
And you know what here too? This sheet, this is the first one where it was pre-labor.
Oh, this was still pre-labor.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So that those numbers that we have there was considering me, Lucian, and Jaden all working on putting stuff together, not paying ourselves.
Yeah. So you can already see how precarious it would have been.
Yeah.
Like it's so important to include that from the start.
Yeah. Wow. Actually, with that context, that price was completely unsustainable.
Yeah.
Like that was so an initial offering price.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's wild. Oh, it's so cool to go back and look at that.
Yeah. I thought everyone would appreciate that.
Yeah.
Sorry for leading the conversation about the labor cost. I'm just going back through my notes here. And
oh, no, that's fine.
It's a lot to catch up on.
Yeah. There's a lot in that sheet.
This is a sheet from years ago.
Right.
I was like, what were they thinking back then?
Yeah. Yeah. In general, your goal is to, out of everything you sell, assume the money that went into building it, the COGS, goes away. And what you have on top of that is your profit. That profit needs to go towards what Lucian and I call your MMO, or your monthly minimum obligation. These are things that don't scale with the amount of machines that you sell most of the time. We'll talk about that later. This is stuff like electricity, rent, kind of headcount, but only some headcount that doesn't scale with machines. So like customer support, or like, people that aren't actually, their time is not directly going into the shipping of machines.
Yeah. A good way to say it is like direct cost. Like,
yeah, direct cost. Yeah.
For people on the assembly line, I know it's 8 hours of their labor per machine.
Yeah.
Support or like marketing is that can't be amortized per unit.
Exactly. So that, and like the parking passes and the rent, electricity, all those other things, the software subscriptions that we have, that's our minimum monthly obligation. That's how much money do we need in the bank to pay our bills every month.
Yeah.
Once the profit that you've made from each sale covers your MMO, every other dollar of profit is extra in the bank. As long as you hit that MMO, you have treaded water for another month. So your goal is to make sure you hit at least that, and ideally some more, so you can build up some runway and some safety. You have some money for future projects. You want to make more money than that so you can invest it in other cool things you want to do. That's your goal. You need to have your profit cover your MMO. That's That's the number one kernel here.
Not even say it needs to at least do that.
Yeah. Like I was saying, you want extra. But like your bare minimum of like, this is floating, this is sustainable, you are profitable, is that.
If it doesn't do that, it needs to either be a very conscious decision with good rationale, or the price needs to go up
or down. It just needs to be different.
Yeah.
Because maybe people aren't buying it because it's too expensive and you need to bring the price down and sell more of them. Or, there's other things that need to happen. Maybe you're running on VC money and you want to operate at a loss for a while. That's okay too.
One of our mentors originally suggested to us that adoption was almost a more important metric than like the profit per machine. And this person even suggested that the machines aren't sold for a profit.
Yeah.
Just to the idea of like seed the world with tens of thousands of lumens, like
exactly.
at like a loss leader amount.
Right. Yeah. Because what's going to help grow a community other than getting it out there and having people use it and try it out? So like there are reasons to have this. I mean, this is more about bringing this is about the price down and less about, fulfilling your MMO.
Yeah.
But it's all stuff you have to think about. If you're okay with operating the company at a loss for a while, you don't have to worry about hitting that as much. If you have a lot of savings, you're okay with burning to try and seed it. That's fine. But eventually you need that number to be, your profit needs to be higher than your MMO every month. Otherwise it's not sustainable. You can't do it.
Yeah.
So that's the goal. Your pricing should try and accomplish that really before anything else, is like supporting this engine to keep running, putting gas in the tank.
Yeah. And what we're talking about a lot here too is the Lumen PMP, which is a flagship product for us. It's like, it's putting the food on the table here.
Yeah.
Any other smaller accessories where its goal is just to sell more of the Lumen.
Right. Yeah. It's helping out. And like at this point now, feeders are like a large percentage as well. So those two are kind of flagship, but we sell a lot of other smaller things, which, like you say, is really more to just support the ecosystem more than anything else.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really your goal, is you want to make sure that it's going to cover that. And like, we highly recommend having a spreadsheet that calculates, you have your minimum monthly obligation in there. How much does it cost to keep the company afloat for that month? What are your costs? How many do you have to sell at a certain price point, removing your cogs from that money that you made before you fulfill it? I need to sell X number of machines a month before we can pay our bills.
Yeah.
Is that sustainable? Do you sell more if you bring the price down? All that kind of stuff. So just have that in a spreadsheet so you can play with those numbers.
Yeah. Do you remember the early on, Steve and I had a spreadsheet where we're like, it was big, medium, large for like usages of cash and how much we were looking to make in profit with our machine sales.
It was like how aggressive we were with spending, I think.
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
Yep.
Okay.
And it was like, well, what does each price we pick do for us?
Yeah.
Do we think the price to hit the medium, like budgetary spending goals is viable or like possible?
Right. Yeah. Pretty much.
It's like, well, like how much growth do we need these lumens to cover? What's past that minimum monthly obligation?
Yeah. Like if the price that we hit and how many we think we'd sell at that price point didn't cover an assembly tech, then like we're in bad shape. Like we got to figure something out. That's not a sustainable like version of the company. Maybe if there's a lot more value add, we make the machine a lot better. We can sell it for more. Okay. And it's faster to make. That might be sustainable. But, it's okay to go through a couple phases of like, yeah, maybe it's not quite sustainable, but we have a little cash in the bank. We can wait till we get to that point where it is profitable.
A fun thing, too, is like once you pick a price and you start selling, you see what the impact of that choice was.
Right. You have data.
Yeah. And you can decide what to do about it. Like maybe you're vibing and you like the price you picked and you're happy with the rate the machines are sold. Maybe you think you don't want to hire more and you're like, I could try a higher price and see if the rate changes.
Yeah, exactly. And like if you're still selling that amount, okay, cool. That's good. If your goal is, I think about like Sikorsky helicopters. They cost an absurd amount of money. Their goal is not to get helicopters into the world, right? They don't care about bringing the price of the helicopter down. If you can't afford their obscenely expensive helicopters, go pound sand. Yep. You don't get a helicopter.
You can take the bus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can take the bus. That's really funny. Yeah.
Steve and I grew up in Connecticut, so we're no strangers to Sikorsky.
Yeah.
A huge employer.
Yeah. My grandpa flew for them as a test pilot.
That's so cool.
Yeah. It was really cool.
But yes, Sikorsky, the price is what the price is, and you can get in line.
Yeah, exactly. So like it depends a lot on your goals, like if your goal is to make as much money as possible, like Sikorsky probably is, you're going to raise it up to the point where as much as you can possibly squeeze someone for, right? We're mixed. Like we really want people to get the machine out. and like have people use it. We want it to stay accessible. I have that Glowtie Steven persona in my mind. I want to keep it cheap for those people as much as we can, but we also need to keep it afloat. So you also need to be really aware of like what your motivation structure is as well. And like how you're optimizing for that too. Obviously you need to stay afloat.
Yeah.
But you should be prioritizing what's important to you as an organization and as a person.
And if you learn you have to adjust, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
Like, you can change a price.
Yeah.
It's hard, and it's certainly easier to lower a price, but I think a Festool as an example here.
Yeah. Festool's a that's a good point.
They're brilliant. To some people, at least. Every year, they will email their customers and say, the price is going up this date. Get your orders in.
Yep.
And I think that's based.
Yep. They're very communicative. Like, and it's always like a reasonable increase. It's like for inflation.
Yeah, it's like maybe there's some egregious outliers here.
Yeah.
No one could tell me about, but I'm under the impression it's like a 2 to 7% price hike. It's like,
Oh, that's not too bad.
It's not breaking the bank for anyone.
Sure. And they just kind of do maintenance for inflation. They let you know. They're very transparent about it. It's like, it's kind of great.
Yeah.
So you can do it well.
And they're not going to sacrifice quality. They're not trying to make a cheaper drill. Like, they're not Akita.
Yeah. Yeah. You can increase the price. Inflation's a good reason to do it. And then also value add. Like, if you make the thing better, it's a great reason to do it.
Yeah.
We've raised the price of the Lumen, I think, 4 times for different reasons in different stages. Like, when we sold our first 100 units of the kit was under $1,000.
Yeah.
That crazy, like, hemorrhaging money price. And then after those 100 sold out, we sold it for $1,125, I think, which still was like barely more than that amount.
I have a fun anecdote here too.
Okay.
So Glowtie Steven had money in hand from a project we sold in college.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So you were thinking about someone of like a $1,500 budget.
Yeah.
Getting into a pick and place. But Glowtie Steven was in like
2019 was when I did it. Yeah. Yeah.
But you bought your Lulzbot way back when in like 2016.
Oh, that's true. Inflation plays in there. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so I got to give a price hike to the Glowtie Steven persona. I was like, hey, Steven, remember that $1,500 you're looking to spend on a cool toy,
means something different,
is like $1,800.
Actually, that's a really good point. And what's also kind of fun is when I recently did a video about making glow ties with the Lumen, and I went back through all my finances. My buddy Alex had me record all the numbers for the finances. And I looked at that Kickstarter. I made just over $2,000 in profit on that project, which blew me away. Before I measured it, I thought I lost money, but I actually made some money on it. That's enough to buy a Lumen.
That's awesome.
Which is cool. It's like, oh, literally Glowtie Steven can still buy it. Like, awesome. Okay, cool. It's priced well for that era of a person, for the value add, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so our first hike to that was just like not hemorrhaging money. And then from $1,125, we bumped it to $1,750. And that was, it's not a kit. It's not a box full of parts. It's a machine that bolts together in under an hour. All the sub-assemblies are made. We print the parts for you. Like, it was a huge value add.
It's the biggest jump the company's probably ever gone through just to get used to that.
Yeah. Running a print farm.
Yeah. Like, it went from a
print farm.
We're referencing a meme.
Yeah.
Inside joke.
That's so.
But it was a whole other beast to start selling the thing assembled.
Yeah.
We didn't necessarily know what that would look like or feel like for the production line.
Yeah.
We had an idea of how long it would take to make each one. We just had to get into it.
Yep.
We'd sold a DIY kit to probably about as many people as we felt were interested at the time.
Yeah. And then from there, we realized that price was also like still way too low. And so then we brought it to just under 2,000, which is where it's been for a while now.
Mm-hmm.
And that price increase, we did something kind of cool with this, kind of like Festool. We sent an email out to our whole email newsletter and we're like, hey guys, price is going up. If you want the $1,750 price, buy it now. We had a huge wave of people buy it. And then we raised it to $2,000. We gave everyone a chance to get in before it's done. And then we raised the price and then we were good. Yeah. And it was all good. And we also knew that we were going to be upgrading the machine to linear rails. So it was also even going to get more expensive for us to make. So it was like also prepping to like have a price that would be reflected by the value add of that expensive increase.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it can be a boon to like send that communication. You're transparent with your customers about raising the price. It's good to do it, have them be on the same page as you. And it can mean a burst of sales too, which is like a good thing that you maybe wouldn't have had otherwise.
I don't even recall sales being diminished at the $2,000 price point when we transitioned to it.
No, they weren't. Another thing to think about too is that the more machines that you ship, your minimum monthly obligation, although it feels like it's a static thing you have to price in every month, it still will go up. Like if you ship 10 machines a month, you're not going to need that many people on staff to build them. You don't need a lot of space. If you're shipping 10,000 units a month, you're going to have a much bigger space. You're going to have a lot more people for customer support. You're going to have higher electricity bills, all these other things. So you're going to have to consider that. That's also going to go up when your number of machines increases. So like you could just forget about the MMO. It still kind of does amortize into the cost of the machine. We just view it as a separate thing and update it every once in a while when we need to make some capital expenditure, like buying a new machine or like updating how expensive it is to run the company for every month.
Yeah, that's fair. And like sometimes we've been at the sweet spot where, oh, if we want to increase our sales rates, we need to hire another person. Do we want to do that right now, or is it better to wait? So like planning around that growth and like being really intentional, like, no, we actually like the rate these machines are selling at right now. Maybe that growth doesn't do much more for the coffers.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. There's what increase in MMO is going to bring you the most value is really what that is. What's going to help you ship the most machines? We talked about this a little bit in the renting the space episode, but like we were going to get another space and we're like, this will help so much for production. We're like, oh, actually, this is going to do literally nothing for production. I'd rather hire 3 people instead of renting out this extra floor.
Yeah.
And like, that's going to actually move the needle way more. So, ideally the MMO does not play into this too much, but like it will scale as you grow.
Yeah. I'm going to try to distill this down a little bit. Like your price for if it's a flagship product, like Illumina, that important to your business, it needs to be somewhere that gets you where you want to be in a year.
Well, what do you mean by that? It needs to be something that gets you. Like the money that you make from it.
Yeah. It has to help get you where you want the business to look and be, or the project to look and be a year out.
Yeah.
Like it has to be a part of that growth. Yeah. You can tell Steven and I have I think we hold the financial model a little bit differently here.
Yeah.
Like you think heavily in the machine sold.
I kind of do. I've been shifting more into the monthly revenue.
Yeah.
Because like I know how much revenue we need to make in a month based on our average profit margin, based on our MMO. How much money do we have to make to stay afloat? And then how much beyond that minimum revenue per month? What percentage of that is profit? Like I'm shifting more into that because now we sell a lot more than just one product. The money we make needs to be more of the metric that we use for reference.
For sure. Yeah, that's so much more than just the machines. I agree with you completely.
Yep. So another thing that's important here is understanding who your customer is. I highly recommend, if you haven't listened to our PRD episode, writing a product requirements document, you need to do a lot of research about who it is that's going to buy this thing. What's important to them in a price? Some people, like the person buying a Sikorsky helicopter, does not care. They probably care, but it's, $1 million to them is like a whatever. Like it doesn't matter that much. Some people are like that. Businesses are more inclined to spend more money on something easier than an individual will. You need to understand who it is that's buying your thing. How much will they budget towards the thing that you're selling? How important is it to them that thing is cheap, or lead time even?
It's a much less emotional thing to a business.
Yeah.
They're looking to use money to solve a problem, and they're looking for the best use of their money to solve that problem.
Right. So when you're thinking about that price, we sell to Glow-Tie Stevens, home gamers trying to make something in the garage. We also sell to huge companies. Okay. We got to find a price that works for both. We got to find a way that works for everybody. You can't always put it into a separate product if you need to. Maybe that higher customer wants a different product that is more expensive and checks some of those boxes that maybe the home gamer doesn't care as much about.
Yeah.
But that's more about product lineup, which might be a cool episode we do later.
Yeah. Like a note on that, we've seen successful, having pro service plans or uptime guarantees, or the product coming with higher support, just an excuse to let a company pay more.
Yep. Companies love trading money for time.
Yeah.
If they can make things go faster by spending sometimes an obscene amount of money, they will do it. And if you have those things to give to make things faster for them, heck yeah, that's mutually beneficial for you and the company that's buying your thing. You need to really know who is buying it. How much money are they budgeting for this thing? You gotta understand who they are and price it accordingly there.
Most definitely.
And another cool thing about, your product being open is there are some people that can't afford the 2K. And the fact that it's open source and we have an available bill of materials for people to download and put the thing together and assembly instructions, you could still make it for way cheaper. This isn't the end all be all of making the thing like it was with an iPhone. You have to pay $700 to get an iPhone, or you don't get an iPhone. But if you're open, there's still yet another way. There's always the home gamer option, always, no matter what we sell it for, which is pretty cool.
completely true.
Yeah.
And like towards that, don't give the squeaky wheel the grease here. There'll be outlier customers that will be very loud and complain about the price, no matter what you pick it at.
Yeah. Yep.
But the people who are happy to pay it aren't going to say much of anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's important to hear those people if people are complaining about the price, but then understand where they're coming from. This is a tough one.
Yeah.
This is pretty tough. And we haven't had that many people complain about, I don't think really much of ever.
I think it's because that type of person is, I'd put them in the caricature of person who would never buy it. They would always build it from source.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, I remember when we released feeders, there was some discourse about the price of the feeders. And like very quickly, people started comparing it to other feeders. And it's like, oh, okay, no, this is reasonable price.
Yeah.
So yeah, people will always complain about a price. And even we haven't had very much at all. So I hesitate to even say this because like we don't really experience it.
We have an awesome community, but there's still always that small little percent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like just don't let it pull you in a price that hurts you.
Exactly. Yeah. Look at the data. Like your gut is
powered by an electric meatball.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I've been on this kick lately where I call my brain an electric meatball to like downplay the accuracy of human beings in what we do. Like we're not good at accuracy or precision or data manipulation. We're good at creative acts and like even communication sometimes rough. But you know, a computer and data is the thing that really should be answering a lot of this. If someone's like, this price is too high, how many are you selling? Are people using it for useful work? Are you getting them out into the world? That's your metric. If someone made a stink and you're like, oh, it feels bad. No, don't listen to that.
Yeah.
Look at what the majority, look at the data. Don't let one squeaky wheel kind of influence you there. If most people are vibing with it and you're moving the machines and people are using it and happy with their purchase, it feels like a good trade-off to them.
Yeah.
Stick with it. That's okay. That other person who's complaining, it's not for them. They should build one.
That's a great benefit of being open source. If someone doesn't like their price, they can make it.
You can build it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do. And that's great.
Yeah.
You know, our goal is to help people make their products or manufacture their products. That is the company's mission statement. Keeping it open is directly in line with that. If you can't afford the $2,000 price for the machine, you can still build it for cheaper. It's a lot more work. It's a lot of debugging, but you can still do it and put this thing together if you were willing to trade time for money.
Yeah.
That's great.
Something awesome I've seen is like the people who can't afford a Lumen at its onset will use one, make money with it, and buy feeders from us.
Yeah. It's the coolest thing. We had someone in our community. They're like, cool. So after my first like 3 jobs on the Lumen, it paid for itself.
Yeah.
Like they did the math out on like how much time it took them to put the thing together and how much they were paying themselves for doing that thing. And they're like, yeah, 3 jobs later and it's paid for itself.
I think it was Mitchell. He came up to me and he's like, hey, I'm doing a support case for this Lumen. And like, did we ever ship purple Lumens? I'm like, oh, wait, what the hell?
It was a home built machine.
Yeah. With our feeders. It was awesome.
Oh yeah. That's right. I remember that. Yeah. That was so cool. Yeah.
There'll always be those people
Mhm.
and listen to them, but like have confidence that you might have picked the right thing.
Exactly. And being open source still captures those people. Those people still get to use your thing. It's just, it's not engaging with the company. It's engaging with the project. And that's all right. Like you need to price it for what's going to keep you running. That's what's important.
Yeah. Now a little bit of pivot to another consideration for pricing is bulk pricing.
Yeah.
Bulk pricing is a strange one.
It is weird. Yeah.
We use it to incentivize people to buy something a little bit more than
Mhm.
they would have otherwise. Case in point, we sell the feeders in 5-packs.
Yep.
We don't really think of a 1 8mm feeder in the hand as useful for doing much of any work.
Yeah.
You probably need 5.
Yeah. Yes, at least. But yeah, you need a number of feeders to, do some damage.
One's not moving the needle. And from an operations cost, like a part of your COGS, there's cost to ship any amount of something to a customer.
Yeah.
So we're able to amortize like for filling feeders
Mhm.
across a 5-pack.
And if you buy multiple 5-packs, this is really where the price break happens, is if you buy like 3 5-packs, we make each feeder a little cheaper.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you're already giving us all this money. It's an incentive to add another 5-pack to it. This also brings up a really interesting experience that you had in Berlin that you cannot get out of your brain.
Yeah, the Berlin pizza.
The Berlin pizza.
And I'll explain it. The Berlin pizza was I trekked 4 miles to a pizza shop across Berlin because I just wanted pizza.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
When I got there, they had the price per slice and the price per pizza, and I had to do a double take a couple times because
That's 4 takes.
Yeah. I did 4 double. Anyway, the price per slice added up to the price of the pie. There was no bulk discount. I thought that was so strange.
So like if there's 6 slices in a pizza and each piece of slice individually costs $3, the whole pizza would cost $18.
Yeah, and I'd never seen that before.
No bulk pricing on the whole pizza.
Yeah, and on one hand, like, that's awesome. They're not forcing me to buy more.
Yep.
But on the other hand, like, they didn't get that conversion to a whole pie.
Yep.
I only got like half a pizza.
Right.
It was weird.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about it either, because normally you're used to a price break, but like in my mind, those are 2 separate products. It's
Yeah.
like if you're getting a slice, you're just trying to feed yourself. If you're getting a pie, you're trying to feed a lot of people. No matter what, everyone eats for $3.
Mhm.
No matter what. So it's just more of like the convenience of how you order it is really the delineation there. Like there's really no difference between those 2 things. It's weird.
Yeah, maybe to them they said more people will buy more slices than they would have otherwise.
Maybe. I don't know. It's really weird. It's weird to think about.
There's so many times I've gone to a pizza shop and I've bought 3 slices and felt like such a sucker because that's like 3/4 the price of a whole pie.
Of a whole pie. Yeah. I mean, if you think about like why this even happens, for every pizza, let's just use pizza as the example here. For every pizza, there's an upfront cost. You have to pay the guy to spin the dough and put all the stuff on and put it in the oven. That happens whether or not you're buying a slice or a whole pizza. No matter what, that happens. And then if you're buying the whole pizza, you can amortize that upfront cost into the whole pizza a little better. But if I have to do that for every single slice, but I'm only selling the slice, I still have to pay that guy to do that pizza. The difference is you can make a pizza and that price always amortizes to those 6 slices and you can just sell each individual slice. So I kind of get it. The amortization fallacy thing, it is a fallacy. It doesn't quite happen. No matter what, that time to make a pizza always amortizes into 6 pieces.
Yeah.
So like, but like if I'm, buying bolts and I buy 100 bolts, no matter what, it takes 20 minutes for a guy to make a label to ship me the bolts. If I buy 10,000 bolts, that time to make that label gets amortized. That doesn't happen with a piece of pizza. So I think that's why that happens, why it doesn't matter. I don't know. It's weird.
It also might be a bad business. I've only seen this in one place.
Maybe he's just broken free of the general populace.
He's broken off the crust.
He's on the outer crust of economies. Yeah. So anyway, people might want a bulk discount. They might expect it because it usually happens. The fact we're even talking about Berlin pizza to me says this was weird enough to you that, what was that 2022 we were in Germany? So like 2 year and a half later, we're still discussing this.
Yeah.
Like it was weird. So if anything, like people will expect there to be some price break if you're buying a lot of, especially for consumables or accessories or something like that. A filament for 3D printers is another good example.
Yeah.
If you're buying printers, you're probably paying full price, even if you buy 10. But if you're buying like an accessory like that, people might expect that. So just know that might be something you get feedback on if you don't do it.
Yeah. It's important to incentivize sales and create that pressure to get 1 extra 5-pack of feeders.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good to have that in there as an option. It depends. Depends on a lot of other things, but that's an option for you.
Yeah. Then there's the razor blade model. That's like another way of pricing something where like the base product is a loss leader, but then the accessories for it are where you're kind of gouged.
Right. Yeah.
Or you're paying a premium.
This is so like tied to DRM too.
Yeah. It's kind of icky.
It can be icky, but like, if let's just say Prusa, for example, sold their printers crazy cheap, but their printers only printed with like an RFID tagged Prusa filament and they gouged you on. I mean, it's just like a 2D printer. I'm just using a 3D example, but like that's exactly what they do. The ink is really expensive. The printers lose money. Like you can buy a printer for like $30 and it's like crazy technology in a printer.
Yeah.
The ink is really where they get you. You can do that. You have to do the icky DRM thing. This is the open hardware manufacturing podcast. You're probably not doing DRM.
Yeah.
If you're considering it, I urge you to please not do that. So like, I like the idea quite a bit more of you just price everything healthily and you're not trying to do this crazy hook 'em, catch 'em, got 'em kind of hooking into the ecosystem thing. Like you said before, there's a customer who built Lumen and bought feeders. That's awesome. We want to be able to enable that. There are people who have a different pick and place and modded it to work with our feeders. That's great. There's people who mod other feeders to work on our Lumen. That's cool too.
The price you pick for a product needs to be integrated into like how you choose to run operations and the rest of the business.
Yeah.
So like the idea of giving away stuff for free or at a loss or at a profit, like all directly needs to coincide perfectly with how you run your stuff.
Mm-hmm. Are you cash flow positive? Are you losing money? Are you trying to seed engagement? What's your ethos of the company? Like it all matters. It's all tied together. Yeah. Long story short, please don't do DRM.
Yeah.
Digitally restricted media is DRM. So like things that are gated behind, like you have to buy our thing and it only works with our accessory.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
or even like friction to use something other than the
Right.
OEM like accessory.
exactly. Yeah.
It's just icky.
It's just
Like,
icky.
Steve and I are big advocates for like right to repair and open source. So
Yeah.
like,
I think we're preaching the choir on this podcast though with the open
yeah,
hardware
you're already here.
manufacturing. Yeah.
good.
Yeah. You're already here.
Tell your friends. Yeah. And in our notes here on like the hodgepodge of considerations, I had one more fact. We've kind of learned that there's things outside of price that play into sales.
Yeah.
The biggest one for us was lead time.
Huge.
There's been times where we changed the price of the lumen and we changed the lead time at the same time, and we have no idea, or less of an idea than we would like.
Yeah.
Like what did what?
Yeah. Changing one variable at a time lets you actually run an experiment to see what works. And like, yeah, lead time is an interesting thing to consider there too. But like, if your lead time is down, you will sell more.
Guaranteed.
Yeah, that's just how it works. If it's quicker, like even if people are like, I know in a month I might need this thing. Let's say your product is a 4-week lead time. I know in a month I'll need this thing. Like people don't necessarily think 4 weeks out for that kind of thing. They don't think 6 weeks out. Like when they buy it, you kind of expect it's going to come soon. So like a shorter lead time does lead to more sales, regardless of what your price is at. It will change it. So know that that's also a lever when you're picking price, especially after you've kind of like seen what a certain price and lead time looks like in terms of sales for you. That's another thing to think about. It's another variable.
Yeah. Our product is for people manufacturing stuff. Those people are looking to solve a problem sometimes quickly.
Mhm.
There's people that care more about the lead time than price.
Yeah. It's a, I don't care what it costs. I just need it now kind of thing. Yeah. Lead time can matter a lot. So know that if you're trying to adjust your price, that's another huge consideration. Maybe you could prevent changing your price. Maybe you change them both. Who knows?
Yeah. And especially I think for us, we're catered towards the manufacturing industry. Those people are looking to solve a problem right now.
Yeah.
When they come to the website, they see, oh, ships in 2 weeks, ships in X weeks.
Yeah.
Annoying.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
this even goes back to the PRD, knowing who your customer is and what they're expecting.
Luckily, manufacturing lead times can be like 12 weeks, 6 months if you're looking to buy something from a chip fabrication tool provider.
Sure.
Get in line.
Yeah, get in line. It's going to cost $300 million and it's going to take a long time to build
And your
it.
firstborn son.
Yeah, exactly. It is, people are hired when you place that order in order
yeah.
to facilitate that thing happening.
All right. Well, that's a lot of like our brain blast on the variables that can affect your pick of price.
Yeah, that's just a lot of what we think about when we have this conversation, just as a smattering.
Yeah. But then there's like two real schools of thought outside of what we just went through. There's the top down and the bottom up.
Yeah.
And like let's tear into like what a top down approach to picking a price means.
Sure. So top down is when you look, you don't really even think about how much it costs to make and stuff to start. So thinking about where's your product going to be in the market? Like, what are people going to buy? That's kind of top down of like looking at it from the customer's perspective of like, how does this value add compare with other things on the market and like my other solutions? Not thinking about it internally from the company's perspective.
Yeah. If it's something you see in a grocery store, how does it look on the shelf compared to its neighboring products?
Exactly. Yep. And with us, like desktop pick and place machine, competition and comparable products were few and far between. So we would also look at things like how much is a CNC machine, a 3D printer, other like manufacturing equipment adjacent stuff to kind of like get a vibe of generally what is the populace going to look at a price and be like, yeah, it's reasonable.
Yeah. Like what does the customer pay for this amount of automation in a similar domain?
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of the top down approach is like very much from the customer's perspective of how it feels to buy it, how it looks, what's the value add perspective, what's the perception of the thing.
Yeah. Like literally, what does that number look like? What does it emotionally make you feel?
Yeah.
And we've learned a lot about that. Like that's the whole like 99 cents instead of $1 rounding or 95 cents to look like a sale, stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. That stuff that happens because it works. Like that's an important thing to think about and to try. Like popping over a big number limit even matters a lot.
We've learned through our experience that we have to be so strategic, and when we cross $1,000 price increment, it needs to be so justified, so clear that it's worth it. You can't even like question the price.
Yeah. It really has to. It has to make a lot of sense to almost everybody. Like that's a big jump. That's a step function.
People will be comparing your product to like the cost of an iPhone, a MacBook, something else that's expensive, and like That comparison will be there, even if it's irrelevant to like your product.
Yeah, exactly. Like people will think about it. Like I remember in high school when I got my first paycheck, I was a short order cook at a bakery. And I got my first paycheck and I remember thinking, oh, this is exactly this percentage of a MacBook. So I used how much did it cost to buy a MacBook as a metric of value. And like even like buying a first car, like the Hyundai Accent is like the cheapest car you could buy in like 2013 when I was in high school. Like that was my metric. What percentage of a car is this? So any other reference point for cost is going to be something you have to play it against all those things.
Yeah. So try on your price, ask your friends, ask customers what they think.
Yeah.
For us, like any community feedback that you've gotten previously or like things you've written up in the PRD is relevant here.
Yeah. Ask your community.
Yeah.
If you have folks that have been building this thing, like we already had a whole bunch of people that were building it before we ever sold a damn thing. And like asking them even, it can be beneficial. Like seeing what they feel about it, like DMing a couple people and be like, how do you feel about this? Do you think this is reasonable? Like, here's how it feels to me, blah, blah, blah. It can be good to just get, you know, a reference point from someone that is in the perspective of a purchaser and that isn't all up in your head and all the feelings you have about it. Like you're going to be off base a little. You're too close to it.
And a fun thing here too is you might learn that people will be willing to pay way more than you thought. Like, it can be awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like I that's usually the experience I have because you pull me up in price. Yeah. And when people don't complain, I'm like, oh, it's like, oh, okay. Yeah. I thought people would be like rioting at this price, but it's like, we're not gouging anybody. It's reasonable. Yeah. Like it always makes sense. So like, of course no one's going to do that, but like exactly like you said, you might be hesitant. You might be surprised. You'll see. Yeah. Once you kind of try it and you start getting feedback, then you'll learn very quickly whether or not you're off base.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about bottom up then.
Yes, this is the other broad category.
There's an awesome blog post written up on the Adafruit blog about this as well that we reviewed when talking about this section.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have it linked in the show notes. It's a good read.
Yeah, would recommend. And bottom up is really looking at like, what does it cost to make something? What's your BOM? What's your COGS? Like, what's your business's operational expenses that you might need it to cover as well? Yep. And like, what margin do you want the product to have to help satisfy those obligations your entity has?
Right. Yep. This is, I think, probably more of how we do it. Well, we kind of do 50-50 because we do think a lot about how does it feel to the customer? What are competing things? What else is in the field? Other types of machines like this. And then also we need to be aware of what it costs us. And ideally you have a very wide gap between the top down price and the bottom up. Like you might only need to sell it for, let's just say $10 from the bottom up approach. If you're doing, you know, a 2 or 3x on top of your profit margin, which I think is in the Adafruit article. Like as a general rule of thumb, you want to do 2 to 3x of your COGS as a broad stroke. But there's so much variation there.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of other things play into it.
I think in doing bottom up, you need to look at like just like what we did in the Lumen DIY kit. How many do we need to sell per month to meet the minimum obligations versus like the price?
Yeah.
Like, are we selling 10 in a month at $1,000? Or are we selling 3 in a month at $3,000? Like,
yeah. And
bottom up still leaves you room for like deciding what the range should be based off. Like what volume you think the sales will be.
Right. Yep.
Like,
yeah.
Because picking the price doesn't inform you of sales rate.
No, not at all. Like it's almost like a guess and check equation where you're like, you need 2 variables to get an answer and you're just putting in one and seeing what you get out the other side. You don't know what the sales rate is going to be. It's going to change based on what your price is. So you want what people are willing to pay for it, which is your top down approach, versus what you need to charge to stay afloat, which is your bottom up. You want those numbers to be far apart. That's your range to pick inside.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's what you have. So it's a little bit tighter if those numbers are really close to each other. But, you know, ideally you have a good gap there and you can pick a number in there somewhere.
Something sensible will be found in the middle there.
Yeah. Hopefully. I mean, it depends. Maybe what you're making is incredibly expensive to make and people won't pay a lot of money for it. That doesn't have a good product market fit. You're not going to make money selling that thing. Like,
yeah.
You have to make sure that enough people in the world are willing to pay an amount that is profitable for you to continue to produce it. And like, not everything sells like that. Some things just don't have an avenue to being made and sustaining themselves. That's the trick of finding a successful business, is like finding a thing that is cheap enough for you to make that you can sustain a thing and people will pay an amount of money for it that keeps it alive.
Yeah. I like to avoid the uphill battle of convincing someone that a price is justified. Like,
Right.
It should just feel like a no-brainer to someone.
Yeah. And if you have a good product market fit and you have a product that people want and is a good value, you don't have to do a lot of that convincing. At least it's a lot less and it's a lot easier to do that. So, you know, a lot of this also depends on like, this process might show you some weak points in your model. Like you might see that the price you really want to charge to really keep things comfy for operations, your target customer may not pay. And like, maybe you still have to keep it a lower price, lose a little money until you either increase the value, find a different market that will pay a little more for it, bring the price for you to make it down. There's a lot of ways that you can kind of finesse it into profitability and like sustainability. That's usually why startup companies hemorrhage money to start. They're figuring those things out. The closer you can get to it up front, the easier time you'll have.
Yeah. Like as far as Opula goes, like our goal has been to be profitable as quick as we can. We've fortunately had that. And generally we pick prices for each product so it could stand alone on its own and be sold independently. Mm-hmm. That's been great. Yeah. We definitely leaned heavily on expecting feeder sales to help cover like lumens. Like it wasn't needed though. Yeah. But we were definitely looking forward to every earlier lumen customer going to buy the average amount of feeders.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Which was great. Yeah. But I love that perspective of like every new thing, at least in our experience, we made every new thing like able to stand alone. It's not like the razor blade model where it's like, oh, we can hemorrhage machines, but we really need those feeders to pay for it. Like you can, but again, that's like DRM, whatever.
I think it leads to people making like externally strange looking decisions.
Yeah, I agree. I'm sure there's a way where you could do it and it's great, but like for us, what's worked really well is like each thing is a good standalone option. Right. Yeah. Especially that there's a lot of builders of other feeder types, other pick and place machines, and they want to mod our stuff in. We still want it to make sense for those people.
And by us having such a straightforward, like sensible model, it lets us focus our attention elsewhere. Like the stuff costs what it does. It's all viable for the business to make. It all makes sense for us to do. Right. And lets us focus on like what's next.
Yep. Exactly. You don't want to be greedy. Like your goal as an organization should be to continue to perpetuate the organization to accomplish the goal of the organization. Your company should have a mission of like doing something cool. Yeah. And like ours is helping people manufacture their products. It's all for that. Any profit we make goes into investing in R&D in a project. We have one we're working on right now that is going to make things a ton better. That money goes to improve stuff. It's still towards the mission. So like you do want to make money. That's a company. We live in the world where you have to do that as an organization if you're trying to do something like this. But like you do it with your customer in mind. Like you want to perpetuate yourself in this organization, but you don't want to do it at the expense of your customer. You're still ultimately your goal should be to help them do something. Yeah.
And like they should see where their money goes.
Yeah.
Like I'm a director at a hackerspace down the street. We had to increase the cost of membership, but they got air conditioning.
Yeah, just yesterday.
Yeah.
Yep.
So show people that their continued investment in your product, your service, your company is worth it.
Yep.
And you'll have customers for life.
Yeah.
Like don't take advantage of the business. Like it's a relationship, just like we had with any vendor.
Right.
You have a relationship with your customers. Like you need to keep them happy.
Yeah.
A good price is respectful. Yeah. Right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Seth Godin is a guy who writes a lot of books about marketing and stuff. He has a great book called The Dip. It's a really quick read. I highly recommend it. It's a good book. But he has a bit about how marketing, like a lot of people view marketing as evil. And I think a lot of marketing can be. But he's like, good marketing is not evil because good marketing is telling someone, hey, I have a solution to your problem. And that solution is a price that you're happy to pay to solve that problem. Good marketing is letting someone know you're going to be excited about the fact that I have this thing for you. And you're going to be gleefully overjoyed to pay for it.
Yeah.
And that's great. It should be mutually beneficial, right? You have to make sure that price is mutually beneficial for both parties. If it's not for either one, that's unsustainable. Can't do that.
And we work really hard to hopefully have everyone in our ecosystem feel like the lumen is that.
Yeah.
And like that value prop gets better for our users every day.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. 100%. It has to track.
All right, folks, that's it for this one. Thank you so much for listening. Please don't forget to leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps us out a ton. You can find Opulo on Twitter and Instagram. Also, please don't forget to check out opulo.io and sign up for our newsletter where we write awesome blog posts and do customer interviews with other folks building open hardware. Oh, and by the way, we just set up podcasts at opulo.io, a new email address where you can send in feedback and suggestions for new episodes or just share your thoughts on the episode you just heard. We look forward to seeing what y'all have to say. That's it, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks, everyone.
See ya.
Great. All right, that was awesome.
Yeah, that was fun. Straightforward.
That was a good one. God